What's going on, running fans, jumping fans, throwing fans, all around athletics fans? Welcome to Talking in Ovals. If you are one of those, you're in the right place. Here to talk some track and field, here to talk some running. As always, with my partner Dave Hyatt over there. But before we get into anything fun, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars, Spotify and iTunes, spread this word of mouth. Go find us on the socials at Talking in Ovals. And before I forget, recording today, Monday, December 19th of 2022, just so we can keep it all on track here. Hyatt, what's up, brother?
Not much. I'm going to give the weekly update. The home renovations are officially complete.
Nice.
So just in time for Christmas dinner on a Sunday. So
let's hope that the snow stays off. I know we have
it's going to rain here
coming in the way, and yeah, it's going to rain over there. So you're where I'm from, down in Jersey, right by in Ocean County. I'm up here in New York in Poughkeepsie now. My parents are trying to make the trip, and they're like, "Oh, maybe it might snow." They're kind of giving me the wishy-washy little
Put some chains on the tire.
Not even that. I'm just going to text you and be like, "Is Adele lying right now?" And you can kind of throw her under the bus or not. I know you like my mom more than
your
you like
mom
me from working with her.
She was a para in my class one year. What a remarkable, wonderful woman.
Yes, she is. And she taught me how to cook. And that makes me even happier because I don't have to beg her for her own home cooking now.
Nice.
Anyone that did not get a chance to listen last week, we had on the great Cadivas Robinson, one of the all-time great 800-meter runners in American history, ever touch a track. Now he is one of the best coaches in the nation over at TCU. I feel like if you're looking at a program that's going to jump through the roof, and TCU's already been good for a little bit, but they're about to skyrocket. Please go listen to that show. Any prospective athletes, go listen to that show, and you will be begging for an official visit with Cadivas because he's just inspiring. And we've had plenty of good and inspiring coaches on here. But, I don't know. Hyatt Cadivas was incredible.
Listen, I have not run in a while, and if you saw me now, you could certainly see that. But just listening to him for 30 seconds, I was like, where are my shoes? Let me go dust them off and just go run. He's just inspiring. He's just a very inspirational and motivational man. And, and he's just so humble. And it was an incredible guest. And I was just honored to have him on.
Yeah, he's a really good dude. It's my second time talking to him, but man, I could have him on every week. Maybe we should make him a weekly guest and just have him talk to everyone else. And that'll be our poll to get other guests, right? Come here. Don't talk to me and Dave. Come talk to Cadivas too. That'll get us a lot more guests that actually want to talk to us. But either way, we don't have any PRs this week, but any coaches that we have talked to, including you, Coach Robinson, I'm going to be texting you. We're going to be pains in the asses soon. Indoor season is heating up around the nation. There's going to be no excuses for you not to tell us your PRs. So I'm expecting to have some to talk about here. So next week, hoping to have PRs. But this week, we're talking about coaches. We're talking about, some great coaches, from coaches that obviously bring some inspiration. We have another one jumping on today. He's someone that if you are from the Shore Conference, Ocean County area, you know who this individual is. Coach Scott Baker. He's been over at 20 years over at Southern Regional as the head cross-country track and field coach. What's going on, Coach?
How's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you on. Hyatt told me, because Hyatt's been, really doing a better job than me getting some freaking great guests. Most of the guests on the show, I have to give credit, are for Hyatt. And he's like, hey, Scott Baker wants to come on the show. And I'm just like, yeah, absolutely. Let's get Coach Baker on the show. Why not? Some of the teams, anyone here that's from the area knows the teams that he has pushed out with Southern Regional over at his time there. I ran against them, and they were so freaking hard to run against, just top to bottom, so good. So, Coach, all the credit to you and your athletes that have been going on there. But enough about your athletes for a little bit. We're going to put them on the side. Let's talk about Coach Baker, because one of the things that we've liked to do on this show is all of our guests, we'd like to give them a chance to kind of talk about themselves and their journey and where it all started. And I think that Now, I don't know if, me and Hyatt kind of didn't set out to do that. I don't think we were just kind of two schlubs and nerds that like to talk running, and we're bringing other people to do it. But, I don't know, Hyatt, I think this is kind of working out pretty cool. We're giving everyone a chance to kind of talk about themselves a little. What do you think?
Yeah, man. I think one of my favorite episodes when we did the Meet the Host, because I got to talk about things that I haven't even thought about or talked about in a long time, and it was kind of cool to go down memory lane.
Yeah, we got a little emotional there too. We're not going to do that here unless Coach Baker wants to. But
I'm not going to emote too much. You talk about that, and like as you just said that, I'm thinking about like high school and running back then, and like there's so many cool memories I didn't think about until you just said that right now. I'm like, oh god, I was a Manchester guy, so we had Conover was the coach, and the legendary Bob Conover and John Musoff. We just and then Polakowski, like those guys were just old timer, like old school, like crazy stuff. And it was like, it was awesome. It was like awesome to be a part of track and field back then, because it was the early 90s and you're just living the American dream of running, like whatever. It was fun.
So where was the spark for you when you, sorry, Coach, when you first, really sat there and was like, not just doing it as fun, because a lot of us, start in middle school and it's just something to do. But then it all clicks for us at one point, like, hey, we actually like this. Like, where was that time? Do you have an aha moment that was kind of the spark for you? Like, I could see myself doing this for a pretty long time.
With Musoff, winter track, my freshman year, I started wrestling and I was like, I don't want to drop weight. And I just like, Musoff's my freshman football coach. I didn't know him other than that. And then I was like, oh, come out. And he goes, oh, you'd make a great pole vaulter. So back then, Musoff was crazy. He had us like doing rope swings.
Back then? It never stopped.
Oh, never stopped.
Just so you know, I was there for the end of Musoff, and he would sit there with this Fu Manchu going, this is the kinder, gentler Musoff.
Yes.
And he'd have a comb going, I'm not going to be my normal self. And I've known Musoff for years because my sister's friends with Chavez and Jared. So it's like I've known Musoff well outside of that. And it's just hilarious, that man.
I was coaching there his last year that he was coaching. He was the exact same way, just so full of energy, but such a but he was also humble, and like he always wanted what was absolutely best. I thought Ian Hahn said it great, how like Ian Hahn's like Coach Musoff said, you're not playing soccer anymore, and that was his soccer coach. So he always had the best interests of his athletes.
So freshman year, he just said, you're going to be a pole vaulter. He did all that stuff with me. Next thing I know, I'm doing some kind of like winter rec camp with him. He's bringing me a house for dinner. And I'm like, I was hooked then. Like, it was just like I was a vaulter. This is what it was. And then Conover got me in the 400 hurdles. And I'm like, oh God, I don't know. This sucks. 400 hurdles still sucks.
Let me go cut weight instead. This is miserable.
And then that's what it was. Like, I was like a 400 hurdler and a pole vaulter. And that was my forte. I kind of got into cross-country training a little bit, but then I was a surfer back then, so surf come up, and then I wound up quitting, and then next thing I know, like, whatever. So I never wound up running a full cross-country season in high school. It was winter track, spring track, and that was my MO. And then college, I went to college down in North Carolina, Wilmington, and again, it was for the waves, and it wasn't for the track and field team. I went down there with the intention maybe jumping. I talked to the coach, and he's like, oh, we start practice next week. This is August. I'm like, we start practice next week. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do it. But then I wasn't even going to be a teacher at that point in time. I just kind of said, I was going to school, being an environmental science major, and I started helping with math and getting into schools down there and whatever. So I went alternate route, and I got back into Manchester. And then it was like, okay, well, I'm here. Like, and I still had that little coaching part of me. Like, I wasn't running at that point in time. So like, let me just try and get back into it. So I coached with Frizzalone, who's awesome.
Yeah.
Another legendary guy. and then like it just so I coached track with them, and then they needed a cross country coach. So I was like, oh, I mean, I'll learn it. I'll learn it. And I learned a little bit. Like, we were 23 years old. Like, I knew it all. I'll just figure it out. I was going to run and everything else. And then so I wound up leaving Manchester for Southern, and I started coaching with Charlie Speck, and then just kind of learning from there, and just learning. And the pieces you dealt with between Conover and Musoff, and then Frizzalone, and then Charlie Speck, like, they were all good-minded coaches, but their personality was even more it was more predominant than their coaching minds. And I think that right now you talk about as a coach, and we'll get to, I guess, later, but that guidance is what put me into where I wanted to be now. Like, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a coach per se, but I wanted to be like Conover and Musoff. And then I got in there like, oh, well, Frizzalone, he inspires kids. Like, that's awesome. Let me do that. And then you see Speck and how it interacts. Like, they're all different, but they all got their kids to their starting line in a different way. And it was kind of cool. So anyway, that was my roundabout way of how I got into coaching.
I like it. So you did the 400 hurdles.
Yeah.
Why do you hate yourself?
It was fun. Like the first 8 hurdles were fun. I had so much fun over the first 8, and the last 2, like I couldn't feel my body, and I guess it was just one of those things. Like, okay, it's just great.
So what you're saying is that in like other states, you would have preferred the 300 hurdles that they have in other states.
No, I would have got my butt kicked. Like the 400, at least I could tough it out, and I'd be maybe tougher than somebody else for the last little bit of it. But no, it was just awesome. I mean, and that event it was fun. No one else really wanted to do it, so you knew you were going to do it. And then I had a teammate, Mike Odell. He's like almost my same stature and everything else. So we used to run the 400 hurdles together and then go pole vault together. It was like that. We were just that tandem and did it. It was kind of fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So take us a little bit down memory road. What are some of your favorite memories that you can talk about? Not the times in Sarco, not going back there and running around doing any bullfights or swimming in the lake or going on it when it was frozen over. Sorry, Coach Chef.
Oh God.
Talk about the things that you can talk about. You can talk about whatever you want now.
The most amazing thing I've ever seen in my entire life. We're in the team room, and we had a screwed around a practice. I think we were screwing around a practice a little bit. Connor has a baton in his hand, and he whips this baton at the ground so hard, but it bounces right back up and lands right in his hand, and just everything just stopped. We're in. So those are that was awesome. Like going to, oh my God. There was just so many little things that you had. We were at Princeton when we used to go to Princeton for indoor track.
Oh yeah,
you did it too. I did it all throughout my time. But we didn't have a bubble yet.
No, we would go to Princeton, we run there, but then we would leave, we run our event early, and we go out to the lakes on the side and go ice skating on the ponds over in Princeton. It was just awesome.
Oh yeah,
trying to wander around into the track where you weren't supposed to be there. I didn't know. It was awesome. And then Red Bank.
Now, Red Bank. I was just gonna bring it up. I was blessed that my team got in a fist fight with Tom's River East, so that we didn't have. So I only ran there one time my freshman year in a freshman race, but my old coach Mark O'Leary is like, screw this, we're never going back. So we never ran counties, never ran shores, and I don't regret that one bit because I ran there one time and I'm like, it felt like I was eating fire after every race. It was like a wrestling mat with lines.
You're running a 400. They have no idea what lap you're on.
Coach, did Musoff tell you your first time running there? Because I remember as a freshman, it was a frost off meet, and he came up to me. He was like, Cuesta. So you're going to go there, probably going to run well, but it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. This track sucks. You just run the race. Don't try and do anything special. Just run your race, all right? And I just remember I'm like this 5 foot, 96-pound freshman, the hell? I just want to break 5. What are you I'm running the mile here. And he's just like, don't worry about anything else. Just run your race. It doesn't matter. This place sucks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Coach.
10 laps of hell. Oh my God. Imagine running the 2 mile there. Oh God.
First of all, they always screwed up laps. It's like every official had a different person, and they always messed up laps. It was 20 laps.
If you didn't count your own laps, then you were screwed. You had to count your own laps as an athlete. You could not rely on anybody else there. It was terrible.
Great. Trying to count your own laps too. Trying to breathe in that place is always going to be fun, right? Just going around turns, it's just a blur.
That was my advice to every athlete I ever knew that never did indoor before that. I said, don't try to breathe, just do it. If you try to and you focus on it, you're not going to. Just run.
Yeah. Look at what kids have these days. I mean, we were so much tougher. I mean, they got the bubble. We
had Jersey City Armory was like our cream of our crop.
Well, no, I remember Jersey City Army when it had a wood floor.
Yeah,
it was wood.
They just did it when I was there. Now
they have the bubble. They can wear spikes because even at Princeton, you couldn't wear spikes. You had to warm up outside.
Yeah, you have your XE waffles for indoor.
And you're a sprinter. And that just changed so much. It's oh God. But now the counterpoint. Now we can't go outside if it's too cold. We can't practice if it's too hot.
Oh my God.
And I was talking. So my job now, I'm a driving instructor. So I talk to a lot of 16-year-old, 17-year-old kids, a lot of track athletes, unsurprisingly, because a lot of people run track. And they tell me, they're like, oh, I don't know if we're going to practice today. It's raining. I'm like, what? Excuse me?
Oh man,
it's raining. And I'm like, they used to relish okay, go outside and run in the rain. We expect you back in an hour. Don't fall.
Listen,
and that was it. Go away.
The first half of our practice was we had to shovel the first 2 lanes of the track from snow all the way around, then work out.
Yep.
And it was like there were no off days.
No.
Rain, snow,
I mean,
lightning.
lightning. I give my kids off for, like that. Kind of stuff, I give them off for, but like
If we were already in the trees in Sarco, we just kind of hid instead. It didn't matter if it lightning. We just kind of hid in the trees and did those trails.
it was so much fun back then that you had stuff, you know. And even even like 10 years ago, we would go out and I used to run with the kids, and we go out and have snowball fights in the middle of the snow. It was fun.
Yeah.
You know?
So, let's start to get into your coaching, because you've now been doing it for 20 years. So you remember being an athlete. Do you remember goofing off before practice, before meets, doing real dumb stuff in the hallway?
Never. No.
As a coach, do you walk by and see some of this dumb stuff in your periffs and go, probably should stop that? But as long as they don't get hurt, I'm going to be okay and keep going? Or does the dad and veteran coaching you now go, these idiots, let me see them. I need to go stop them now. Don't be stupid. Like, where is that?
You know what? I found that sometimes it's in between. Like sometimes you're going through it and like, I've done it worse. I don't mind it, and you let it go. And sometimes it's just like, there's so much of it going on, and like there's so many kids all over the place. Like my sense, like I'm overloaded. It's like I can't. Like that's got to stop. Go over there. I
remember, Hyatt, you probably watched as we were there. Do you remember when we used to play nutball with the tennis ball, where we used to sit on either side of the hallway in the middle, right by the gymnasium, and roll legs spread wide with the tennis ball, just arching it as high as we can, trying to tag each other. Yeah. We were absolute idiots.
That was fun. Like,
it was great.
The stuff they do now, it's not as fun as that. Like they do little stuff, but like no, we had some good stuff. Rolling the shot puts at each other's balls. You're sitting at like start each other.
Like, and like we didn't have cell phones, so there was a lot much more interaction. Like because like now I feel like even when I was the coaching, at Manchester towards the end of coaching, like everybody was like by themselves, like sitting in the hall waiting for the rides on their phones. Like we used to like my head coach would drive me home from practice every day because my mom and dad were like, yeah, we're going because he lived like 3 blocks from me. So he would just drive me home from practice every day. It was, I mean, I would never do that now, but like it was just a whole different time. It was fantastic.
Well, that was like back in the day. Like we didn't have cell phones. You took the bus back to school, called your parents when you got there, and they had to come. And like I lived in Whiting, so coming from Whiting to the high school, it was like you're waiting for an extra 25 minutes. So we had some fun.
Yeah.
Or you had to go and hope that there was a coach there and go into the coach's office and bang on it. Coach, can I use your phone? No. I should have told your parents the right time. And then they come out and they're like, give you a ride. And that, like, they would make you sweat it out a little.
Yeah, every once in a while, like the bus driver, Mr. B was the driver. He drives back.
Mr. B was the
Mr. B. He was still driving as of like 3 years ago.
He retired, I think, 3 years ago. I think it was officially. But Mr. B, honestly, the most legendary Manchester figure, I think, of all time is Mr. B.
He was my neighbor. He was my neighbor back.
No way.
Right next door. It was awesome.
That's so cool. So let's jump in to coaching. So you hinted a little about, I kind of want to give this coaching thing a try. Was there always a part of you, even as an athlete, and, you were a pole vaulter. So being a pole vaulter, you have to have a lot of discipline. You have to be technical because as much as you were a surfer dude or whatever, that's the event where you could die. Like there's like no ifs, ands, or buts. You can really take a chance. You're putting if your technique sucks, if that thing snaps, something goes wrong, you're kind of screwed up there. What made you want to be a coach? Is that something that kind of clicked at a young age, or what made you want to jump into coaching?
Musoff. Simple enough, Musoff. The way he inspired me to be who I was just easy enough to be that. Like, and then and come back. If I was going to teach, I was going to coach. That's just kind of how it worked out. Like I wanted to do that, and what better to do it than coaching? So it was awesome. It was like that kind of impact. And then we got into it. Like once you got that little bit of like this kid listened to you and got something, then that's that dopamine fix. Like I want more. Like now it's like this thing. Like I don't know what my win-loss record is. You talked about this. I have no idea how much meets I've won or lost a long time. But I can tell you the teams we had and who was on them, and the fact that like what they did and how they interacted. It just kind of that kind of cool thing we got going on. And
now
go ahead.
You said that you were a pole vaulter. So when you first got into cross country, like what were some of the main things that you feel that you had to learn? Because it's a completely different,
Everything.
style of training.
You pick up books, and back then, like back when
Jack
I started
Daniels.
coaching, Jack Daniels, I didn't get until later. I didn't get till like
Really?
2005 or 6, and then I'm
Wow.
like, oh, Jack Daniels stuff is pretty good, but it's like, I don't know. I wanted something different. I go,
Yeah.
So then I go. Then now I'm in this wormhole where I have too many sources. It's like, what am I going from? Like you pull up, and is there such a thing as too many? But there's so many different stuff to learn from. But anyway, to answer your question, okay, so we're just going to run. Okay, so what workouts we have to do when, and like all that kind of stuff. And like I ran middle school cross country, so I knew how the scoring worked and that kind of stuff. But like, in terms of the training for the 5K, it was a foreign object for me. Like I have no idea what I was getting into. And then you get around a little bit more. So when I first was in Manchester, we just ran. We had Tommy Honey. Do you remember?
Tommy Honey, probably a young Joe Spizzato on that team, or Charlie was there. Was Charlie there?
Charlie
Spizzato, he was the older brother. He ran a little bit. Trying to think, who was with Tommy Honey? Tommy Honey was 2 years older than my sister.
There was Chuck. What was his name? Tall, skinny kid. Chucky. And then Tristan
Savona.
Yeah. God.
Trying to think, because that team was pretty good too. They were a decent team.
Yeah, and they had this freshman that came in from this Lakehurst freshman that was really good. And I forget his name right now. We had it was kind of like, whatever. It was cool. It was like a nice little team.
Yeah.
But like I didn't know stuff. So like I'm just kind of going from that. I talked to Frizz and he would give me some ideas what to do. And then then I came to Southern, and then Charlie Speck kind of put me on the right path, and then gave me some books, a Lydiard book I read through. I'm like, I'm not doing this with my kids. Like we didn't have the session. Like Lydiard's at high mileage in the summer and then break it down with all the stuff. There's no way. So then you got Jack Daniels, which is kind of cool. You know what actual book I got was kind of good? It was like Coaching Cross Country Successfully. It was by Joe Newton. That was a good one that kind of gave you an idea with stuff. And then you start going, and now you go into some of Magnus's books and like Science of Running and all the other stuff, Better Distance Coaching and all the other stuff.
I also think now too, like there's so much, like there was no internet really. It probably wasn't prevalent then. So like now there's Let's Run, there's like all these different forums where like coaches can kind of learn from other coaches. So, like I always like going to a meet and like seeing like coaches talk to other coaches. Like maybe you have a kid who's really, really good and that's your first kid who's good, but that coach had someone who was on that level. So you can kind of like spitball off of them. So it's always good seeing like coaches kind of interact. Like you are competitors, but you also want what's best for the athlete, which is cool.
Well, like Sean McCafferty and I now, we'll talk back and forth about training sometimes. And we're not exactly the same. We have some ideas, there's some back and forth. But like even with like Jackson, like Braddock now at college, like we'll talk training all the time. We'll just get on the phone and talk for an hour or two about like, here's this training, here's this idea, where do we go from here? What's the idea? What's the concept? And you get it. And eventually what you start doing, you start picking out pieces from everybody's different training. Okay, what's the commonalities and what's the difference? And what do these differences do? Like, we know what the commonalities are going to do. Everyone's doing like tempo work and threshold work with them. Where are they putting the other pieces in?
It's interesting because I coached for a little bit at Manchester. I helped out Griff for a little bit. And then I came back. I ran over at Marist College, and I came back and I volunteered was paid for 2 years here. And the cool thing about college, I think that's a little bit different than you're going to get over in high school, is when we all go away to meets and we're all staying at the same hotel room, like in Boston and stuff like that. You'll feel out. And my, coach I'm going to volunteer, Chuck Williams, he's an amazing coach. I think he's one of the best coaches in the nation. It's like, we don't get enough credit because we're small school Manchester, but Chuck's amazing. And he really knows a lot of the other coaches. So like we'd figure out who's there, and then we'd all, go congregate and have some adult beverages. And then it really just gets into a lot of just, how's your kid doing? What are you doing with them? Okay, this and that. And similar to what you guys are talking, where it's a little bit limited because you're at a meet, you're still trying to focus as you're also, yakking it up with some of the coaches, but you can really sit down and have a conversation like, oh, they're here, I'm trying to get them there. And yeah, we're trying to do some of this stuff. They've been injured. And it's like, that's kind of a cool element. And, I feel like it would be cool if high school coaches could do something like that a little more. And I feel like that would be awesome where, they could just go to the bar a little and not even just drink, just hang out, bullshit a little and talk about running. Like, I feel like that's almost a missed part of high school.
Yeah, because I mean, you're sitting there and you're so far at these meetings, like, oh god, at that point you just want to be done, but you're in the bubble for 6 hours, like, oh god. But then, yeah, like, and then we're some coaches always get to talk about, let's get together and drink some beers, and it's always like, okay, we mean to, but then it's like life gets in the way.
Of course.
We have families. We have this. We have to plan. We have all these kids who got into a fight, who's in prep hall now, who's barely hanging on the team, and we need them for scoring. Like,
like everything. Like, what is this person going to do? You're trying to get the kids in the school, so you're reaching out to colleges. You're trying to do everything for them, and it's like, oh, and I still have to teach, and I still have to be a dad, and I still have to be like, it's like, take care of the wife or the girlfriend and stuff like that. And you're trying to balance it all out, and it's like, sometimes you feel like you're hanging on by a thread.
And you have your friends outside of the other coaches that kind of take priority over people you just see on weekends, like long lost friends, right?
Most of my friends are just in the coaching ranks anyway. Everyone else is gone. Like, oh. But
easier that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier that way, and it's just kind of like, okay, so yeah, I spend most of my free time. I get up in the morning and I'll find something to read. I'm always trying to read. What am I going to read next? What am I going to learn about? So now I'm coaching the high jump. Like, I'm 5'8". I've never high jumped in my entire life. So I'm trying to figure out how to coach a high jump. So I'm since I started beginning that, like, every day I'm trying to learn just one other thing to look at, something else to learn. And then when I learn that, how can I apply it to something else? Like, so when we start doing like speed work with the distance guys, well, what does that work with the sprinters, and how does the sprinters work with the distance guys? And we have winter track. We have 89 guys in our track.
Right.
Wow.
That's absurd. And we have, I have one full-time coach, another half-paid coach. So trying to run that it's like,
yeah, that's a lot.
And the level of skill in high school is absurdly different from your top talent athlete to your kid that's just trying it out. Wants to know what it's like, and you're trying to balance on, you have some real high level athletes over at Southern.
Yeah.
You got some real talented kids, and it's like, how am I going to design a workout for this group that's not going to intimidate this kid and push them away? Because, as much as it would be easier at times to just be like, you guys are only here for fun, go do this. Like, you do want to coach all of them as equally as possible.
And like right now, I feel like I'm being semi-effective at it, because but it's organization. Like, I'll spend the day before, and I'll have a spreadsheet that I spend out minute by minute for every 10-minute breaks for like my short sprinters, my long sprinters, my hurdlers, my mid-distance guys, my distance, and breaking down on top of that. So I send it out the day before, so they look at what's going on, so they know what's going on. So now the kids know what's going on. So at practice, I can coach. I can say, okay, we're going to modify this for you instead of trying to explain the workout. Right. They already know what's going on. It ruins the element of surprise for them. And I'll have a hard worker for the sprinters, and sprinters like, oh, I'm getting a haircut today, so I can't come. But you know what? The kids that want to get better are going to learn and be there and get better from it.
So that's actually a very interesting. So how much of a difference was it when you were coaching at Manchester, which is a Group 2 smaller school, and then you go to this huge Group 4 school? Just the sheer size and numbers of athletes, it had to be like a big change.
It was, but it kind of just, when you're young, you just immerse yourself and you have no idea what's going on anyway. I didn't realize how much I didn't know. Like, and I've forgotten so many things now. Like, I didn't know things. So I'm like, it doesn't matter. We'll just kind of do this. So then you start realizing to make it more effective for the kids and get them to buy in what's going on, you have to take care of the younger kids, the older kids, because you never know when the younger kid's going to develop and an older kid's going to fall off, and you got to kind of keep everything on cue. Like, you got to keep it interesting for the older guys, so they're not getting bored with what's going on, but still want to progress. You got to keep it exciting for the younger guys, so they're doing something that they want to do, but they're still getting something out of it, progressing. And it's like from cross country. Like, cross country is amazing. Track, I'm spinning every second of the day. Like, okay, I got to go here, and it's tough. And thank God you create a culture where the older guys can take care of the younger guys a little bit. So
that's important.
Yeah, my older high jumpers will start helping with teaching the younger guys what's going on. So it's reinforcing their skills at the same time teaching younger guys, passing it on. So I can go work with the hurdlers, or I can go work with the high jump, the pole vaulters, and it just helps. That kind of thing is what you look. If you create that culture and the climate, it just builds on itself. And you just got to make sure you take care of it and groom it and water it. But it kind of once you get it going, it's kind of a cool little thing that just keeps growing.
So have you ever considered, you obviously you haven't taken stock and really focused on all the success you have, and you've known that you have had successful programs. Have you ever thought about potentially looking back? Like, because, I know all coaches, they keep a boatload of their workouts that have worked. They all have them there. They have all the little things that have worked. They have notebook upon notebook upon notebook, and you're 20 years deep. You probably have a closet full of things that have worked, and even things that haven't worked that you thought were going to work that you're going to go back to because you swear it's going to work. Have you ever thought about maybe packaging up your philosophies and trying to put them in a book yourself? Because people like to learn from success, and people like to learn from what works.
I actually just had this conversation probably about a couple 3-4 months ago. Like, all my stuff now, like, I have like pace charts. I made up my own pace charts for everything, and equivalent shit. It's kind of cool stuff, and like heart rate charts and all this other fun stuff and training stuff. And like, I thought, yeah, it'd be kind of cool to do that, but like, and I say I haven't been successful. Like, in the local level, I've been successful, but I haven't had that national caliber team that goes out and does something crazy special. We haven't toppled CBA like that. That's even like, okay, with CBA, like, we're doing one thing. Like, I want to be one of the teams that perennially just challenge CBA. Like,
listen, when I was in high school, my high school team won counties 3 straight years in Ocean County, over at South, and we were always second short conference. We just couldn't take them down. They were just so good, and Heath was there, and they were so well coached. And now Sean's there, which is funny because I ran against Sean. I used to run with Sean summertime. He would come to our practices over at South because he went to Central, which was close, But there's nothing wrong with losing to CBA. I mean, they're just an absolute juggernaut.
And also,
I've never fault myself for losing to them, but I'm like, but they set the bar so high, so it's not like and some people are like, oh, CBA, we're never going to beat them. That's unfair. Like, so what? They're kids. They believe like the rest of us, and we just got to figure out a way to do it better. And if you can get there, be competitive with them, even though they might have a better deck, if you know how to play the cards right, you should be able to be competitive with them. And that's.
You certainly can. There's the difficulty, though, of, we all know the reality of, being Manchester, being Southern. Our best athletes aren't coming out for cross country and track all the time. We have great ones, but they're playing basketball. They're wrestling. They're playing soccer. They're doing baseball, lacrosse. CBA, that's what you go there for. So there is that definite, advantage. That's like having a really good public football team and them whining that they didn't beat Bosco. Like, and it's not a whine. I'm not saying you're whining, but it's like, it is just, it's not an excuse. And I get the competitor in you. You're like, hell, I have great teams. I want to beat them. Like, that's awesome.
So I figured out, how am I going to do this? So about like 5 years ago, I started like a youth running club in the summertime. And I do it in the fall and spring, just to get more kids involved in running. Like, if I want to have kids love running, I got to start them younger. And if I had the time, or as another coach, if someone to do it, like to have like a youth running team in the summer, like just to compete, like that kind of stuff, then all of a sudden maybe you could change it.
So I have a few young coaches that might be hungry that actually might have the time to do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll talk to them. I'm friends with a few of them. We had them on the show. John Davern and Alex Lynch are both Manchester grads. Davern had a great career over at Lock Haven. Alex Lynch was a runner all throughout college. Lynch is over at, where is Lynch? Ocean. Lynch is coaching over at Ocean. Davern's now, I forget where Davern's coaching now. Davern's also coaching.
No, he's not coaching.
I think he's coaching on the side.
Oh, is he?
He's doing both. He works for Flow Track and also coaches. So I think I might have 2 young guys that might be interesting. Both still runners, still very much involved. And also, I feel like you might need some young guys sent your way to help you out over with track and field, just to volunteer. It sounds like you may need some volunteers over there.
Yeah, I mean, we had with Nick Fabrizio a couple years ago. He graduated 2 years ago, and he helped out last year at the hurdle a little bit. It was awesome just to have an extra set of hands and eyes and help out. Like, I'm hoping to get some of these alumni to come back and start wanting to coach again. Like, hey, come back and help out. But unfortunately, the teaching profession has been taking a hit the last couple of years. It hasn't been as glorious as it was when we got in.
Right.
Yeah, and I honestly, after seeing the culture that they came from, wanting to come back and try and coach is a little different, right? It's different. I kind of want to ask you about that. 20 years, you've seen a lot of change from culture, from kids, everything going on. Hyatt mentioned the cell phones, but just social media in general becoming a big thing. Like, how has your coaching philosophy had to change, like not wanting to change, but absolutely had to change in order to adapt with the times?
Oh God. I mean, it's weird you say that because I think I just adapted without even thinking about it. But like you think about it, when I first started, kids are always they're there and it's ready to go. And now it's like, okay, so we have to build in time. So like we don't start practice for 20 minutes after the end of the school day. So they have their time to decompress and do their stuff. Like we're wasting time. But if I don't do that, then I'm battling trying to get them all at the same time, the same starting line.
Do you find yourself being nicer by default and trying to be more understanding than maybe you were, just because, I guess there are certain type of athletes that you could still kind of kick in the ass, right? And be like, hey, let's go, get it in gear. Mm-hmm. But I feel like there used to be a lot, and especially, I'm a distance runner, Dave's a distance runner. There's a lot of really soft distance runners because we're mental head cases. Not soft, like we're physically tough, but we're crazy, right? One little thing's off with a distance runner and they can be done for the day. They're nuts. So it's like, I feel like when I was there, when I was coaching, when, you guys were running and coaching, there were kids that needed to be treated with kid gloves a little, but that was few and far in between. Now I feel like that population has expanded a lot more.
I'm thinking about it like...
Don't offend any of your kids.
No. I'm thinking about like myself when I was a younger coach. And I used to yell more than I do now. But I'm trying to think if I was even effective yelling back then. Like, did it make them any better at what they were doing? Or was there a better way to handle it? And I think that's through the course of time, like as you handle something, you always reflect on, did I handle it the best way? Can I have done something better? So if it happens again, maybe you do a little bit better and maybe it goes a little worse. We just keep on taking those notes along the way. Because we're human. We're going to screw up, and so I handled this the wrong way and the kid reacted the exact opposite way I thought he was going to do. So I screwed that one up. So now it's reeling back in. How can I adjust and go from there? So I think I became more dynamic in how I have to handle with kids now. Like certain kids, you have to respond to them differently. And I think like just through the course of it, and as I get older, like I used to get mad at kids for showing up to the bus late, right? Well, if a kid's relying on the parents to get them to the bus, right, getting them mad at the kid, is that going to help him that? Is that going to make him any more effective? Is that going to make him, like the kid's already, he's bad in shape because he's late to the bus. If I yell at the kid, I'm like, so if I try to make it a point, or maybe I'll make a joke to a parent, like, we got to get a kid to the bus earlier or something like that if I see him, or make it something like that. Like the same thing, a disciplining a kid, like, oh God, I talk about this later, I guess, with my son, but like the 1 year, like last year, my son did mess up in school. So I got on him pretty hard in school. And he had a race that day. And he ran like absolute dog crap. And I beat myself over that because I know how I interacted with him in that day affected it later. So I got to that was a changing point for me, realizing like if I have an issue with a kid, like if he's got in a race that day or if there's something else going on, like he's got to get a team, like he's helping the team out, I will address it. I'll make a comment, but a smaller one, and then I'll address it more after the fact. After this performance is done, after his race is done. So it's not going to negatively affect his performance. Because if I get on him for doing something wrong and then he runs a poor race, see that double negative, it's worse for the kid than better for the kid. It's just something like I picked up along the way. Like I just know like the whole idea of like we were talking about like Magnus stuff before. Like Magnus's stuff is like stress, like physical stress and mental stress. And like once the cortisol levels rise, whether it's physical or mental, you're screwed. It doesn't matter. So how do you calm them down? How do you not get the kid all riled up? And then that kind of thing, is that more so now than later? Maybe we're just smarter about doing it now than we were 20 years ago. Like, I don't know, being a ball buster and a kid and say, hey, you got to do it my way or I'm going to beat you senseless. Like the days of Conover screaming at us and running us into the ground because you screwed up. Like, was that more effective? I mean, we learned from it, but was there a better way to do that? And that's always, what's the best way to get the reaction that you want out?
Right. And there's that, go ahead, Dave.
No, I just wanted to say, like, so since the pandemic and, all that time, have you noticed a change in kids, maybe in their mental approach or the way that they handle certain situations? Because I know I remember watching during the pandemic, you had a kid, was named Jackson Braddock or.
Yeah.
And I remember watching him run 8:58 in a 3,200 time trial, like by himself. Like there was a video. I'm like, this kid just broke 9 minutes, but like he lost like all that time. So like, how do you feel kids have bounced back from that time? And have you noticed a change? Are things maybe starting to get back to how they were prior, or do you think that'll always have an effect on maybe how a kid is in a mental capacity?
Loaded question. I don't know, because everything's so affected by everything else. Like I noticed with that, like this class, like the freshman class, it's a little less like I'm not weaker, but there's just fewer of them coming through. Like they wanted to come out, and that was the class that got affected the most, I think, from it. So it's kind of like, well, that was a weak class, like trying to get them out. But that being said, I just had a bunch of freshmen come out for the distance team that were pretty cool kids. So who knows? Like, I don't know, like if was that just it was trending that way anyway beforehand. Like the typical like kid gloves thing was a little trending that way anyway. And that maybe the COVID thing gave us that gap, like that pause for us from being around them, so you didn't realize it was happening more in front of your eyes. I mean, that being said, I have kids that like student-wise that don't want to come to school because we were learning online. Are you going to post this on Google Classroom? Like, no, I'm going to teach it to you in class today. Like, here.
Yeah.
So in terms of coaching, like, well, I didn't feel like coming. Like, well, then we're at a culture where it's not like that. Like the majority of they're going to pull them in and they're going to be there, and the kids enjoy being around each other. So I go to a cross country practice and there's 45 kids, and there might be like pockets of different kids in different spots, but they always have somebody they're going to be with and someone they're going to get better with. So, I mean, that's the beauty of having the downside is it's so hard to manage it, but the good side is like sometimes it helps each other out. Like they have their home with the bigger programs. And with COVID, for us, we posted stuff on Google Classroom all the time. I posted a workout every day for the kids just to keep them still engaged. And I didn't like say block them out. I mean, we had a virtual track meet with Jackson. Like, so the Jackson
cool.
Were online, just like posting stuff. And you roll like probability of making events happen. And Jackson Braddock false started in the 2 mile. It's kind of like stuff like that. But you do something like that to keep them interested. And you just kind of keep them, like their interest. The kids' attention span's obviously lower than it's ever been because there's so many distractions. Mm-hmm. Like we were sitting in the car with our parents when we were kids, sitting up singing the oldie song that they were singing. Like now, kids are like, pass me a charger, and they're on their phones. I don't even talk. My own kids in the car, they're on their phones. They don't talk to me when I'm driving somewhere. So you're like, it changed, and it's you either adapt or you fall out of relevancy. So you kind of do it without even realizing sometimes.
So absolutely. you talked about your John Musoff and his impact on you, and Rob Conover. I brought up Tom Scheffler 1,000 times. Hyatt's brought up O'Leary 1,000 times, and they all have kind of something in common, that they are the old school-ish. They're not afraid to get on you, not afraid to yell on you. But I think all three of us to a T, and I even had the privilege of having Musoff coach me. We all knew they cared, right?
Yeah.
Top to bottom, we all knew they cared. And that's always been the goal, right? As a coach, you want to coach them to success. But if the athlete doesn't think that you individually care about them, they're not going to buy into your product. They're not going to buy into anything you're trying to teach them. So now as you're going, what are the challenges that have evolved now? Because jumping off with COVID and also the attention span and everything like that, has it become more difficult to try and show these kids, like, I'm all in? Like, I might be like, a guy that's been here forever, Coach Baker's there, but like, I'm not getting weary. I'm not tired. Like, I'm all in for you guys. I care about each and every single one of you. And I don't care from the top kid to the bottom. I want you all to succeed. Like, what are the challenges growing to try and gain that trust from the kids? Or does that start with the culture that you built where your seniors and juniors are talking to these freshmen going, hey, listen, if you give your 100, he's going to give 100 back, type of deal?
I mean, that's pretty evident from for our guys. I've been thinking about I have a relationship with all of my kids, every one of them. Like I'll find them in the school. Like we have a big school. I won't see them all, but I'll make it a point when I pass them in the hallway to make sure they know they're there. Make sure they feel important. Like whether it's my fastest kid or my slowest kid. Like I have kids that'll come in, like my good cross country kids. Every morning they come in my room and they drop their bags off and we talk for a little bit. Or sometimes you just hang out and talk to each other. Yeah. But then some of the younger guys come in and start doing it. And we have the team room stuff after. Today we had our, but my team's huge. Like we have 80 kids. So I'm trying to coach all these kids. And it's so today we had the other run, we came back and I had a meeting with my distance kids at the end of practice because at the beginning of practice I couldn't. So we just sat in the library for 15 minutes and just talked with the 25 kids there. And we talked about different training stuff and where we're going and that kind of stuff. So when you sit there and talk to him, and then every practice, I always make some kind of like, that's my little secret, don't listen out. Make some kind of physical contact with them, a fist bump, pat in the back, or handshake. It's just every time I'm with them, they know I'm there. It's that physical touch. Like on the bus, I sit in the front of the bus, but I'm the last one off the bus because I'm fist pounding or handshaking or patting the back every kid off the bus before meets and after meets. It's just, they know. I look them in the eye and say, "Hey, nice job," and I learn all the names by the second day of practice. Like even the kid that's the slowest kid in the back, like, what is this kid ever going to help us with? But then you learn a kid, and next thing you know, like a kid that you never knew could do something special. You remember Jared Icabelli? You know the name Icabelli? Who is like,
No.
2008. He was a freshman, like 2000. I'm making up this years now, but like he graduated 2010, I think. So freshman 2007 or something. And he was.
I had just graduated 07, so we didn't have any.
And you wouldn't know Jared.
No.
He was legit the slowest kid I've ever had coach. The slowest kid. But then he grew up. By the time he was his junior, we were sixth in the state, I guess it was.
Yeah.
And he was in that top 17. He goes on to run at Cortland.
That's incredible.
He became All-American, and so you never know where they're going to come in.
Right.
Another kid, Nick Nacco, back in the day, he joined track because he got cut by bowling. Like his mom made him do something. He got cut by bowling, so he joined the track team, and he wound up running like 4:18 in the mile. So you never know where they're going to come from. So you love them all, and hopefully some of them come into play, and some of them you're their only hope. You're their escape from everything else. So
right.
So. Last thing I want to touch on, you kind of had a dream scenario and also could turn into a nightmare scenario.
Yep.
You kind of touched on it. You got to coach your son. And there, it's kind of something where, I have two daughters. I don't know if I'm going to get a son, but I have two daughters. I'm coaching one in soccer right now. She's 4. So am I really, but it's like everyone kind of wants to coach their kid at some point. You got to coach your son at a pretty high level. What was that like, kind of balancing dad and coach? And you said, one time you went dad on him and you knew you were too hard on him.
Yeah.
And that kind of ate at you. What was that like? And what advice can you give anyone else that might be jumping into your shoes at some point that has a kid on the horizon and is like, how do you take that step back? How do you step out of your body, stop being dad, stop doing what's best as dad, and then coach him up?
Do your best. Oh God. The biggest thing for when he was a friend, like he was in 7th and 8th grade. He kind of was all in, listened to everything I said. Like I still knew more than he did back then. So that was the thing. And then as he came to a freshman, he starts to know a little bit more than.
Well, I mean, he watched Without Limits, so now he knows everything.
You guys,
once you become pre, that's the end of it.
I saw it on TikTok, so it must be something I saw. He's a kid. Like he's trying to find his own way. So what I had to really consciously do, and I actually had a conversation with him doing it and saying, "Hey, listen, when we're home, I have to be your dad. Right? I won't be your coach. If you want to go for a run, you don't want to go for a run. Like I will do my best to just be your dad. And when we're coaching, I'm going to be your coach." So he's really good at practice. He'll call me, "Hey, coach. Hey, Coach Baker. Hey, Coach Baker." So he's all good at it. And at home, it's he still calls me coach. My son's all he's a good kid, and he's pretty talented. But he's still figuring it out. He wants to be a pole vaulter. He wants to be a 200 guy. He wants to be a miler. I can run cross country, but I don't want to run hills. I'm like, so you just kind of like you learn, nod and smile. Like it's easier sometimes just you got to be careful not to agree with them because then they'll say, you told me I couldn't then. I'm like, you just nod and smile and go with it. Okay. And you hopefully like just anything else you want them to figure out. Like I could push him however I want to push him. But at the end, if just like any other kid, if I push a kid to run, he doesn't want to run, what's going to happen? The kid's going to quit. It's going to be a very harder time. So you just kind of figure it out. And a lot of times, like I sit back and I screw it up. And sometimes being the dad, like I think I just had a Facebook post about this the other day, and I was like thinking about it at my banquet. Like being a father with all 3 of my kids has allowed me to be a better coach because I can now figure out pieces what it means to be a parent. Like what are the parents struggling through? What are they trying to get through? What can they understand more? So now I'm a little more compassionate when stuff happens. Like a kid forgets his shoes at practice. Like what the hell? Like my son forgets everything. So I have to make sure I double check with it. Right. So now so I make a list for kids when we go like we went to Poughkeepsie over for the overnight trip in September.
Yeah.
I made a checklist for them, and I put it in 2 different ways so they couldn't screw it up. Because if it's easier just now, because I did it for my son because I figured he'd be the one to screw it up first. And I love him, and he'll tell you the same thing. He would probably done it the same way. So it's kind of interesting. Now my daughter's starting to run now. She's in 7th grade and she's running. So she's all about running now. And I think she likes spending time with dad and more than anything else. So that's going to be interesting because I won't be able to coach her when she's high school because I'm going to coach the boys.
Yeah.
See how that goes. It's interesting. Coaching your kid is probably it's harder. It's harder than ever realized because you see it and you know what your kid's capable because it's your kid. And you want to just be like, hey, stop being a schmuck. But then like you kind of figure out you got to treat him the same as you treat the other kids because otherwise it's like, So he made our top 7 this year for that last run of the States. And like it was like we were going to the last meet. Whoever has the fastest time at this meet goes in. And thank God, like it wasn't even like it wasn't close. He was like 15 seconds ahead of the other guy. So like okay, so then like God, I'm not gonna have to like. Oh, he was 1 second. It was 2 seconds. It was more clear cut than that. So I went through, and then he went to sectionals and ran a good time at sectionals. It was good, and it was nice to have him as a sophomore. I had 2 sophomores in my top 7 this year that were part of that team. So going forward, maybe get that spark. Maybe if something else happens, and go from there. And it's just like coaching and being a father. You just hope you get it right, and you have to be smart enough to know like sometimes it's not going the right way. You got to pause and go back at it again.
Yeah. Have you ever found yourself sitting there going, I really need to tell him something? He's going to flip out on me as a coach. So do you go up to one of your seniors and go, hey, can you go tell him this? Because if I tell him, he's going to wig out on dad me and not coach me. Can you go up there and let him know and kind of just give him that, old senior captain nudge?
Well, what happened? Like sometimes the kids that did it, and some of my assistant coaches. I have the greatest coaching staff in the plant. Like we talk about my friends. That's my crew. They know how hard it is. Like him and I were button heads. Like we'd be at practice and like, oh my God, you guys butt heads, and like you sound like the same person. I'm like, shut up.
He is my spawn.
But they would step in and they would start doing stuff and they'd be like, hey, Logs, do this for me. It was so much better when they kind of picked up and did that. Now it's not their dad, or like I had a pole vaulter come back from Gavin Lum, who's now jumping at Stockton, comes back and I said, can you just work at the vaulters a little bit? And my son's one of them. And Gavin jumped for me. So he's telling all the things that I told him to tell them.
But it's coming from him. It's not coming from his dad.
It's exactly the same thing. But no, if I just do this, oh, that's cool, Logan. Great. Like, I'm glad you do that. Like, so you're trying to urge him on. And it's like, it's draining. I wouldn't want any other way. I wouldn't give up the opportunity to do it.
Right.
But oh God, it's definitely trying. I think when he graduates, it'll be like, oh God, okay, so anything else good, I watch him. If not, like I don't have to coach him. I'll love him as a son. And it's just a thing. Like you make sure every day you tell him you love him and you move on and there you go. Yep.
I saw that firsthand because my high school coach, his son was on our team and he was on our cross country team. And he was, battling it out for like, 6th man, 7th man, the 4x8 because we had a good team. We had the guy who won the meet of champs, Chris Greer, and then we had Steve Vagger. So but I thought that the hardest part for him was like when his son was like right there and he didn't make the team, but he was such an honest coach that he could separate that. And I always like looking back now as a parent, I was like, that had to be so hard. Like you want your son to be on that team because he's your son, but you also can't have any favoritism to anyone else over the team who's working just as hard.
But the beauty about this sport, and I say this over and over again, is you have a time and you have a height, you have something that doesn't lie. Like it's not like, oh, well, he's a better quarterback or he can kick the ball harder. Like, he's faster. And then when it comes down to it, like, and that's what we go set the climate at. Like you want to be on the track, then you have to be one of the faster guys there. Yep. And you're coaching your kid, you want to be there, like you have to be faster, And then of course he gets back to my son. He gets into the top 7, and then the next time I'm at the middle school cross country race because my daughter's running, and he's running the workout back at school, and he's like, he calls me, he goes, this is so bad, I don't even belong here. Put the other guy in because I don't want to be. I'm like, relax, it's okay. Like So you're talking him off the ledge, and like, you belong there, you deserve there. And of course, the next race he has an amazing race. So it kind of, you know, I think I learned, like, you can't always feed into what they're saying, whether it's an athlete or your kid. And you just kind of like, you have to be, when it's hard, and it's because we're all emotional kids. Like I've learned from you, Soft. You're up and down, you're over the place. Sometimes the kid needs that stoic. They need to know they can like screw up and you're still going to love them no matter what, whether it's your athlete, whether it's your coach. And I think that's what you try to do. And we don't always get it right. Like, and that's what we do. Like, if you stop trying, if you think you know it all and think you're always going to get it right, you're done. You're going to be done as a coach or a person. It just doesn't work that way.
You know, whatever you do from the outside looking in, if your boyfriend gets if your son gets a girlfriend and starts to have a dip in performance, don't blame it on her. That won't help.
Been there, done that, and we didn't say anything. It just happened. Actually, that's when my seniors and my upperclassmen came into play, and like, it's the girlfriend thing. I'm like, and you know what? They're gonna have that whole little thing going on, and that's what it is. That's life, figuring it all out. So
absolutely. So I think that's a good note to end this one on. Coach Baker, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And it was awesome. Anytime you want me back, we'll have a visit.
Absolutely, Scotty.
So
absolutely. Again, he's Coach Scott Baker, 20 years, wildly successful head coach, cross country track and field over at Southern Regional High School in Jersey there. Anything that you want to promote, want to talk about, any like Twitter handles for, Southern XC, Southern Track and Field, anything like that you guys do?
Hang on. We have an Instagram feed up. I have no idea what it is.
This is where all the coaches we have kind of sound like the old men, like, oh, I don't know. We have a Twitters and an Instagrams.
No, we have the kids hooked it up and they want to do it. And if I don't put it, I don't have no idea how to switch it. Hang on, there's got to be a way. I have no idea. It was in there. It's gone now.
That's fine. So go look up on Instagram, Southern Regional XC.
Track and Field or something.
Yeah, track and field.
And it just started, but it's fun. No, I have nothing. Like, dude, there's so much good stuff out there. Just keep going out there and enjoying it all.
Absolutely. Hyatt, you have anything else to say before we jump off here?
No, I mean, like coaching in Ocean County, it was always great to see Scott interact with his athletes, and just knowing that his teams would always be extremely prepared and always ready to go. And it's, I think over the past 10 or 15 years, there's no program maybe in the state that can top the success of the Southern girls and the Southern boys. Like, both teams have been so dominant and so good for so long. And it's such a testament to all their coaches and their athletes. And it's always been a pleasure to watch your teams compete and perform. And like, I remember when I was coaching, like, you would always say hi. You're always just a really good dude and a nice guy, always approachable. So thanks for coming on, and it's been great having you on.
Dave, thanks very much, guys. Alex, thank you guys. Awesome. Have a great Christmas too for you guys. This is awesome.
Yes. Merry Christmas.
I am hooked on your podcast. I'll be following. I'll listen to every one of them now along too. So.
Spread the word. Let your athletes know. Let's go. Let's get it out there. Send the PRs. Let's do it.
Guys,
what else with PRs?
I'll send you some.
Awesome. Again, everyone, thank you for listening. One thing that I think we should take from all these as we listen to all these coaches talk, if you're a young aspiring coach, if you're a young aspiring athlete that might want to coach, the one theme we've had from every single coach here, from me to Hyatt to Coach Baker to everyone that we've talked to, care. Show that you care. If you care and you show up and you care about your athletes, it's going to reflect. It's easy to see. It's organic. And
anyone will
buy into you. Yes. And they will want to be coached. If you show up there and you're just like, I know what I'm doing, you have to listen to me, they're not going to do it. Show that you care, invest your time, take the chance of being emotional with some of them, reach out to them, meet them on their level, you'll have success. In some way, you'll feel it. Nothing better than watching an athlete PR. It's better than winning a big meet. I guarantee it. Your highest athletic success will be low in comparison than when you watch that kid that's worked their ass off get a PR. I promise you, it's worth it. So everyone, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it talking in ovals. Go find.
Happy holiday, guys.
Yep. Happy holiday. So long, everyone.